look now at the starting lineup for the 40-lap feature event for the NASCAR-sanctioned Winston Busch late models. And as they move down the back straightaway, inside row number 1, the current point leader coming into tonight's racing action. He could add a few more points tonight, as well as getting his first feature event. We'll have to find out. The car sponsored by Barley Ford, as well as Bojangles, the number 98, the Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe of Keith Gardner. On the outside of him, the number 2, the budget rent-a-car and truck Chevrolet Lumina from Jeffersonville, Indiana, Steve Webb. On row number 2, on the inside, it's the number 8, the Crisco's Racing Engines Buick of Chuck Winders. And on the outside of him, defending late model champion here at Louisville Motor Speedway, Frank Kimmel in the Clarksville Schwinn and Fitness Chevrolet. On row number 3, on the inside, the Tumbleweed Racing Chevrolet, the number 11, a Z28 Camaro of Joe Williamson. And on the outside of him, in the Toy Tiger Racing Lumina, Larry Metters. On back in the lineup, it's the Roadrunner Video Club's Racing Oldsmobile of Scott Walters, last week's feature event winner. And on the outside of him, in the J&R Salvage Asbestos Removal Buick, the number 08 of Curtis Teague. On back in the lineup from Sellersburg, Indiana, the number 87, the B&J Custom Carpentry Racing Pontiac, the number 87 of Gary Hostetler. And on the outside of him, another driver with a feature event win here at Louisville Motor Speedway in 1991, Bill Kimmel Jr. in the John Jones GM City Lumina. On back in the lineup, the number 90, former sportsman champion here at Louisville Motor Speedway in the Jenny Quip Banquet Table Buffet Buick, Rick Irwin. And on the outside of him, in the B&R Speed Shop, Mack Tools and Hutchinson and Insurance Racing Buick, Junior Blankenship. David Cornetti in the number 83, sponsored by the employees of the Kentucky Truck Plant in a Ford Thunderbird. And alongside of him, the number 68 of Steve Brown in the B&R Speed Shop, Rocky's Auto Sales Racing Cutlass. That's the first half of the field as they pick up the RPMs down turns 3 and 4. The green flag is out and we're racing. And down the back straightaway, they'll scramble for position, but a Ford Thunderbird shows the way, moving into turns 3 and 4. Out of turn number 4 and busting down the front straightaway to collect lap number 1. And it's Keith Gardner in car number 98 by about 6 car lengths as they move down the back straightaway. Chuck Winders now in car number 8. Moving up, taking over second. Joe Williamson and the number 11 runs at third. Going fourth, a fine battle between Steve Webb and the number 2 and Larry Metters as they race side by side in the middle of the back straightaway, moving down into turns 3 and 4. The number 28 of Frank Kimmel inside the top 6, followed by 7th place running the number 5 of Scott Walters. Going 8th, Curtis Teague, 9th to Gary Hostetler, and rounding out the top 10, Bill Kimmel Jr. Out of turn 4 and down the front straightaway, they get into a single file formation throughout the top 10 now as they scoot out of turn 2 and work the back straightaway. After 5 laps of competition, Steve Brown in the 68 goes back to the pit area. Let's check with the battle now at 4th place. Frank Kimmel in the number 28 going to work with Larry Metters down the front straightaway. Kimmel looks to the inside as they move into turns 1 and 2. They're side by side down the back straightaway as the number 3 of Marty Belcher turns his machine around here on the front straightaway. Kimmel in the number 28 takes over at the number 4 spot. Scott Walters in car number 5 tucked right in there as well, and he too will try to pull up along the inside of Larry Metters. This could open the door as well for Steve Webb, but they make a little contact out of turn 4 and down the front straightaway. It looks as though the number 3 of Marty Belcher is headed back towards the pit area as we check with the battle at 2nd place now out of turn 4 and down the front straightaway. The number 8 of Chuck Winders running at 2nd. The number 11 of Joe Williamson runs at 3rd. Going 4th now, Frank Kimmel, and then Scott Walters and the number 5 showing up inside the top 5 as well. And as they come down the front straightaway, directly behind them now we see the number 69 of Bill Kimmel Jr. working on the inside of Larry Metters. And they got Curtis Teague in that battle as well. He's directly in front of those 2 cars as they work out of turn 4 and down the front straightaway. Back into turns 1 and 2, and again they're side by side, but it looks as though Kimmel will take the spot away from Metters. Trouble out of turn number 2, and it's the number 87 of Gary Hostetler getting spun around in the 2nd turn area of the speedway. The green flag remains out after 12 laps of competition. The Barley Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe continues to show the way. Also sponsored by Auto Body of Louisville, Bojangles, Kentuckiana Auto Trim, and Fire Protection Systems of Louisville. The number 98 of Keith Gardner. And he has every bit of a 15 car length interval, and there you see that interval. There's second place, the number 8 of Chuck Winters in his Crisco's Racing Engines Buick. And it looks as though the number 11 of Joe Williamson in his Tumbleweed Mexican Restaurants Racing Z28 Camaro is reeling in actually on Chuck Winters as they come out of turn 4. The number 28, the man that's always been in a hurry here at Louisville Motor Speedway, Frank Kimmel. And the number 28 now sets his sights around the outside of Joe Williamson because it looks as though a slower car, the number 28 of David Cornetti, spun in turn 2, just got right back into the lineup, but in front of some very quick race cars. Cornetti finds himself back into the lineup, and we avoid the caution flag situation. Okay, trouble on the back straightaway there momentarily for Curtis Teague. He came right up on the number 5 of Scott Walters. Walters' machine slowing a little bit. And again, Curtis Teague now pulling up along the inside of Scott Walters. Walters again getting off the pace a little bit out of turn 2, so there might be problems on the Billy Harris Racing Oldsmobile. Walters down the front straightaway, falling back out of the top 5. 18 laps completed as the cars now make their way past the leaders, for that matter anyway, make their way past Henry Wallace out of the 4th turn area. Everybody going down low on the inside portion of the speedway. Jimmy Logue in the number 10 going 1 lap down. Let's set the field for you as we pull back and look at the leader. The number 98 of Keith Gardner in the Barley Ford Bojangles Racing Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe. Car prepared by Kevin Gardner, moving down into turns 3 and 4, having his best run of the 1991 racing season. Hard to believe that it's his best run coming into tonight's racing action as the point leader, but has yet to pick up his first feature win. He right now has about a 15 car length advantage on the rest of the field after coming out of his number 1 starting position on the front row of the feature. Okay, let's look back to second, and we've got a fine battle as Chuck Winters in the number 8, the Crisco's Racing Engines Buick, goes to war now with the defending late model champion, the number 28 of Frank Kimmel, as they work out of turn 4 and down the front straightaway. They're back into turns 1 and 2, and again, that's the battle for second and third. The number 11 of Joe Williamson still runs at 4th, and Steve Webb at 5th. Going 6th on the field now, the number 08 of Curtis Teague, 7th to the number 69 of Bill Kimmel Jr. Going 8th, Larry Metters, 9th now to Rick Irwin, and rounding out the top 10, I believe, Jimmy Logue, but that's unofficial. Problems on the number 28, Frank Kimmel, up in the turn 4 area, and he is slowing down. Trouble up in turns 3 and 4 as several cars have struck the outside retaining wall, and it was the number 74 of Brian Baum, the 83 of David Cornetti, Hank Hartledge in the number 29, and Gary Hostetler in the number 87. And it looks as though there's some oil on the racetrack going down the back straightaway and into turn number 3, and perhaps that's the reason for the caution flag. But yellow flag coming out at lap number 25 of the 40-lap contest. Into turns 1 and 2, and again, Gardner so dominant in this event, nails down the lead as they move into turns 3 and 4. Joe Williamson in car number 11 runs at second. Trouble on Chuck Winters as again he turns the car sideways out of turn 4, tearing off the front end of that 1991 Buick Regal and pulls to a rest with a blown out left rear tire on the machine. As the red flag comes out, we'll revert our scoring back 1 lap. And they're off into turns 1 and 2.
I saw this.
Keith Gardner and look, Joe Williamson loops his car over the second turn area of the speedway. It looks like, whoa, no, 2 more cars coming together. Larry Metters and the number 2 of Steve Webb, and it brings out the caution flag. 27 laps now completed. The yellow flag coming out. The number 98 of Keith Gardner maintains his lead as they came back to the start line. Flag is out and we're racing again back into turns 1 and 2. The number 98 of Keith Gardner paces the field down the back straightaway. Joe Williamson in car number 11 runs at second. Larry Metters goes third. Rick Irwin up to 4th. At 5th, it's the number 95 of Fred Williams. And the field is back into single file into turns 1 and 2. Okay, just behind the 5th place car, the battle for 6th, and it's Brian Baum in car number 74 on the inside, the number 69 of Bill Kimmel Jr. on the outside, and the very brave Bill Kimmel Jr. as they go down into turns 1 and 2. But as you can see, the wetness on the racetrack doesn't leave a whole lot of room out there. But Bill Kimmel Jr. is trying to use up every inch of racing space that he can. As again, they come out of turn 4 and then back down the front straightaway. Keith Gardner by about 6 car lengths now as they move down the back straightaway. The number 08 Curtis Teague rejoins the lineup after 30 laps of competition now. It's still Keith Gardner out front in the Barley Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe. The ride also sponsored by Bojangles, Kentuckiana Auto Trim, and Fire Protection of Louisville. Now to turn 4 and down the front straightaway. The number 11, the Tumbleweed Mexican Restaurant. Kroger's Automotive and Able Auto Parts. Pipe Fitters Local 522 Z28 Camaro of Joe Williamson runs at second. Larry Metters in the Toy Tiger Racing Lumina currently goes at third. And then at fourth, it's the Jenny Quip Banquet Table Buffet Dixie Dry Cleaners Buick of Rick Irwin. And then just behind him, running at fifth, the number 95, the Convenient Food Marts of Minor Lane Heights Chevy Lumina of Fred Williams. So that's the top 5 right now after 33 laps of competition. We're 7 away from a finish here, actually less than 7, as Keith Gardner works out of turn 4. Rick Irwin doing some racing now for third with Larry Metters coming out of turn 4 and then back into turns 1 and 2, and some smoke showing from Fred Williams' machine, the 5th place running car. Freddie having one of his best runs here at Louisville Motor Speedway in the feature event. Out of turn 4 and down the front straightaway, and again Rick Irwin trying to draw a bead on Larry Metters in the number 05, but he's got less than 5 laps to go. Keith Gardner in car number 98 shuffles it out of turn 4 and down the front straightaway. Into turns 1 and 2, the number 11 of Joe Williamson still about 4 or 5 car lengths behind, and then a great battle for third place between Larry Metters and the number 90 of Rick Irwin. So that's the way they look right now. The number 95 of Fred Williams, his machine still smoking, and he could become victim of either his own engine or perhaps that of the number 69 of Bill Kimmel Jr., who is filling up his rear view mirror right now on the back straightaway. Lap number 38 goes up on the board this time around. And the leaders are back into turns 1 and 2. And this time Joe Williamson is closing in on Keith Gardner as they move down the back straightaway. Less than 2 laps to go now. Gardner out front in the Ford Thunderbird, showing the way out of turn 4. And the white flag is out, less than 1 lap to go. Into turns 1 and 2. Joe Williamson in car number 11 runs at second as they scoot down the back straightaway. Larry Metters spins out of turn number 2. Rick Irwin inherits the number 3 position, and the checkered flag comes out. Gardner, then Williamson, Irwin, Kimmel, and perhaps the number 74 Brian Baum may have got in there for 5th. But man, oh man, what a finish here tonight in the 40-lap feature event for the Winston Bush Late Models. Collecting his first feature win of the 1991 racing season here at Louisville Motor Speedway. The car sponsored by Barley Ford, by far the best, by Auto Body of Louisville, by Bojangles, Fire Protection of Louisville, and Kentuckiana Auto Trim. The number 98, let's hear it for him, Keith Gardner.